Hi, welcome to our second HoneybunsBakeAlong session, and thanks ever so much for joining us. It really does mean a lot to us all here at Honeybuns to have you here today. And thank you very much for voting for your raspberry bun recipe. I'm really chuffed. This is from the Honeybuns All Day Cookbook, and it's an adaptation of the recipe there that appears as Mog's raspberry buns. Mog was my mum, and she was a brilliant home-taught cook, and her rock buns were legendary. So it's a play on that beloved recipe, and it means a lot that you're going to share it today. So learning from last week, what I'm really keen to do is really stress how you can do things on a budget, I think it's an issue for most of us right now, and also how you can pimp up the recipe if you're feeling a little bit more decadent. So I'm going to bear that in mind, and I'm also going to keep in mind the different flours particularly and their nutritional profiles. It's something that I touched on last week, but just to mention to you in passing as I'm weighing out the ingredients, what the nutritional profiles and the vitamin contents of certain flours are, if that's of help to you. I hope so. And also, what else? Yeah, I want to also explain that some of the quirky little things that I might do, I'll explain why we do them in the bakery on a commercial level, but they aren't necessarily that essential in the kitchen situation on a smaller scale. I'll try and remember all of this. Most important, as I dish out the ingredients, I'll get started in a minute, I'm going to wibble on a bit about those aforementioned points so that you've got a chance then to get your stuff weighed out. I don't want you having to scrabble around and rush. It should just be a really chilled out experience. I hope so anyway, and you can chuckle at me and the mistakes I'm bound to make. So we're going to start off with 200 grams of ground almonds. I absolutely love baking with ground almonds. Those of you who've got either of the books will know this, or eat our products. We use a heck of a lot of them. The reason being, they taste gorgeous. They're packed with vitamin E. They're packed with selenium. Lots of other goodies. And they taste fab. They're really, really versatile. They bring a lot of oil, natural oil. That's 110. So I need another 90. And they add really good sweetness rather. So you could actually afford to take your added sugar level of your recipe down a notch. So you'll notice that we're not using that much sugar today relative to the amount of flour. Okay. Then you go to 200 grams of another gluten-free flour. Now in the book I split that between polenta and sorghum because I love them both. That's my holy trinity really in gluten-free baking. I'd use ground almonds, sorghum and the polenta. I just love that mixture. We're not going to do that today. We're going to simplify things. So I'm going to use I've already measured this one out. This is 200 grams of sorghum flour. I get asked about this a lot. I know I mentioned it last week. It really is our go-to trusted store cupboard staple. It's a fab multi-purpose gluten-free flour. Do not worry at all if you don't have this. You can use any proprietary shop-bought gluten-free flour. Dove's plain. I know Claire, I think, is using self-raising today. Hi Claire. That's absolutely fine. You're just going to omit obviously your added baking powder, bicarb. You're not going to need either of those. So you can use, just to recap, I've used 200 grams of the ground almonds, 200 grams of the sorghum flour. You can use, instead of the sorghum flour, you can use tapioca, you can use the Doves I've just mentioned, plain or self-raising. You can use, what was the other one? You could use polenta. Any of those would be absolutely fine. If you don't want to use ground almonds, you can use ground hazelnuts. Ground peanuts work really well. If you want to avoid nuts altogether, then I would massively recommend, you'll know by now that I'm a huge fan of Linwood's stuff. So they do a range of really gorgeous blends of milled seeds, and they work just as well as the ground almonds. They can be pricey, so I'm mindful of that, but they really are well worth it, and they're packed with nutritious stuff like selenium, fibre, iron, oh gosh, omega-3, lots of stuff, really, really good for you. So now I'm going to move on to your sweetener. And again, I've put down crystallized sweetener of choice, which is a little bit American. Why I do that is just to give you the option of what you've got in the cupboard, basically. And this is a really good example of how we do it here, because I've got a mixture. It looks like I've got coffee granules in my sugar. It's actually granulated white mixed with muscovado, because that's all I've got at the moment in my kitchen. So it shows you how forgiving the recipe is, really. You can use granulated white, you can use golden granulated, you can use castor if you want, demerara, light golden, whatever you fancy. Muscovado is fine, but you are going to get a treat clear, stronger flavour, and you are going to get a darker product at the end of it. If you're fine with that, then yeah, go for it. So that's 165 of that. This is a one bowl wonder again. People do ask me why I don't cream the fat, the butter, or if you're using dairy-free margarine with the sugar. It's because I'm lazy, and we get just as good results doing it this way and adding an oil. That's without having to do the creaming method. So whack it all in the same bowl. Then salt is optional, and I love it, so I am going to add it, but feel free to miss it out. That's a half to a quarter. I'm just going to use a quarter of a teaspoon. I find that it works really, really beautifully with the vanilla that we're going to add now. Hetta, who is doing her placement here and is fantastic, brought this in for me today because I'd run out. We can't get it for love nor money locally. And this stuff is brilliant, but very, very strong. So I think I'd originally said to you guys, probably, yeah, I'd said half a teaspoon. With this stuff, this concentrated paste, I'm actually going to go a quarter of a teaspoon. If you've got a straightforward liquid extract, I would put half in, if that makes sense. So stick that in there. Don't panic if you haven't got vanilla, but it does bring something to the table. I've pre-measured out 230 ml now of rapeseed oil. We use rapeseed. It goes in our vegan and dairy-free products some of the time. We also use refined coconut oil. We really, really like rapeseed oil because it's grown in Britain and we can source it relatively locally. Refined coconut would be great. There is sometimes confusion about refined and unrefined. If you're using unrefined coconut oil, you're going to get a distinctive coconut flavour, which you might be okay with. If you don't want that flavour, use the refined. That's the only difference. It's still not processed heavily. It's still a really decent natural product. So whack that in. You can also use corn oil, sunflower oil. I'd avoid the olive oils though, because they're going to be quite strong. Yeah, not really what you want in this recipe. This is a 3, I normally crack them straight into my bowl for my own cooking, but I'm going to be good. Pre-crack them just to make sure they're okay. 3 free-range eggs. If I don't state, assume medium or large, you're going to be fine. And if it looks a bit mean, add another small one if you've only got small ones. And then we're going to go, this is unmissable. This is simple, but it really, really works. It's a zest of 1 lemon. It balances out the sweetness of the recipe. It works brilliantly with the vanilla. It's just lovely. Don't skimp this one, would be my advice. I'm using this is an old lemon. That's why it's like trying to grate a sponge. Right, let me see whether I can do another. We might just have to skip that and pretend. Yeah, that serves me right for not getting fresh ones. So there you go. Right, pretend I've done that. This is a microplaner from Lakeland, or other, I'm sure you can get them other places, but it's really good. That isn't the fault of this, it's the fault of the lemon and me. 2 teaspoons of gluten-free baking powder. I know I'm going to have questions about this because in the recipe and I hope you haven't gone out and bought, oh, don't shout at me if you've struggled with the bicarbonate of soda that I've listed. That is a habit from the big bakery. So you are in this recipe, certainly you only need gluten-free baking powder. By all means, knock yourself out and add the bicarbonate, but you're not going to need it. And I have tried the ones I've done, I did try without the bicarb and they've worked brilliantly. I'll show you in a sec. The reason that we add the bicarbonate of soda is for extra leavening or extra bump and raising in the big bakery, because sometimes we're using, I'll show you next week, but we use massive bowls. And if you've got all of the ingredients, particularly if you've got varying acidic levels, so if you're using zests or oils, citrus oils, juices and stuff, you've got to be very careful that you don't deactivate or overactivate various different ingredients. It gets a bit scientific, and I'm not, the bakers are much better at it than I am, but basically we over egg the raising agent in there and we add the bicarb as a bit of a backup. You don't need to do it here because you're only using small amounts. We're going to get on with it quickly once I stop talking, so your ingredients are good to go. They're going to go straight in the oven. Don't worry about the other stuff, just use your gluten-free baking powder. Like I say, if you're using self-raising flour, you don't need this at all. It'll have enough in there for you. Now, it also calls for, but we're not going to come to that yet, you will also need, just depending how you're doing it at home, half a jar approx of bog standard raspberry jam, seeded or seedless, your preference. And you're also going to need, but it's not a deal breaker, I know they're really expensive, the freeze dried raspberries. Okay, so I'm going to whiz this up and show you the consistency. You can do this by hand with a wooden spoon, that's absolutely fine. You could put it in the food processor if you wanted. I love this little handheld thingy. So super quick, and I have got a habit, as those of you who have seen me last week, of forgetting critical ingredients, so I will have a little scout around and a double check I've stuck everything in. Now, what you need to do, you can see that you've got here, I've got little balls there of, I don't know what that was actually, I think that was sorghum. You just want to avoid that. You don't want to be biting into pockets or bubbles of unmixed mixture. So give that another go. Yeah, I'm happy with that. And I'm just going to spin that gently. Great, I didn't smother everybody else with that. And this is best described as a hybrid between a cake batter and a dough. Okay, so it's funny, I've been practicing this just to refresh my memory, and my instinct is always to put my hands straight in there, which you can do. So I'll show you both methods. What you could do, and I've said in the recipe it's going to give you 12 to 15 buns, beautiful buns, which it does. You could do it that way, and it's quite malleable, it's not too sticky. You're going to put them on a pre-prepared baking sheet. I only had a Swiss roll tin, but ideally you want because you can get them all on then, you ideally want a square flat baking sheet if you've got one. You can either brush that with rapeseed oil or whichever oil you're using, or you can line it as I have done with paper. I prefer the paper just because we've got it here with the bakery. Okay, the other method, which my mum would have done for her rock cakes, or did do rather, was she would have done it with the 2-spoon method. She would have got a dollop of rough dough, and hence the name rock, because it would have looked like a little boulder, and that's where that comes from, or so she told me anyway. Okay. And out of habit, I just roll them because I like handling the dough, because, I don't know, a bit weird. And then you make again, you can use the bottom end of a spoon handle if you prefer, teaspoon or what have you, but I just use my fingers to make a little well. I'm just going to wash my hands very quickly, I won't be a tick. So I hope that's making sense so far. It's really, really easy, as you can see. It tastes flipping delicious when they're done. It's that really gorgeous, subtle interplay of the lemon zest and the vanilla. It really, really works beautifully. Right, so a little hack here. With your raspberry jam, to punk it up and to cut through the sweetness and to really get a punchy raspberry vibe, that's where the freeze-dried comes in. I did realise, we use loads of these in the bakery, but they cost a flipping fortune if you're going to the supermarket, which I am conscious of, and I'm being super heavy-handed here because I can. And you just literally mix them all in, and it really adds ooh la la and oomph to the jam. Okay, that's the reason. But you can either add, for a very similar effect, a squeeze of lemon juice or lemon zest, or you could use lemon oil. And there's an absolutely beautiful brand called Boyajian. I'll put all of this in a blog afterwards for you guys at home. It's stunning. You could wear it as a perfume. A little goes a very, very long way. And it's a cold pressed lemon oil. It's absolutely wonderful. They do all sorts. They do orange, grapefruit, blood orange, you name it. It's an American company. But you can get it over here. Lakeland, I should be getting money from them. I'm not. Lakeland used to stock it. I don't know whether they still do. Oh yeah, so I need to make a little well there. You preheat your oven to 170 and you bake these, I can tell you with some certainty. Stick your timer on for 16 minutes, check them, see how they're done. They will be done at that point, but if you want them a little bit browner, deeper golden colour, then stick them on for 18. That would be my advice, having done quite a lot of them over the last few days. If you want an extra glaze, then you can always brush this. It's going to be slightly sticky, but you could do it with a beaten egg for extra gloss if you fancied. I quite like the rustic approach though, so I don't bother with that. The thing that I was going to talk to you about in terms of how decadent you're feeling and what the budget's like and whether you've got excess raspberries, you can put fresh raspberries or frozen. You don't want the clumpy ones, you want individually frozen ones, free flowing. 140 grams of those would work brilliantly. Equally, if you want to stick freeze-dried raspberry into the mix, that will work as well. Just be aware that it can catch sometimes. So if you've got them poking out of the dough, they can go slightly darker. The other thing that I'm itching to do is to try rhubarb and ginger. Blackcurrant and elderflower, like the cakelets we did last week, they'd work really, really well. Anything really that you've got in season that you want to lob in. Gooseberry and vanilla would be gorgeous. Just marry up the freeze-dried. You can get most fruits in freeze-dried with any fresh, with the jam to keep it consistent in terms of what flavour you're doing. And that's it really. So I hope you enjoyed that. I can lay no claim to making these look beautiful. Hetta did these. I think she's done a gorgeous job. So this is our pretty version. You're going to get 12 to 15 of those buns. They are absolutely delicious. And we bake them for 16 to 18 minutes. Yeah, 16 to 18 minutes. And they are absolutely delicious. You can put them in, once they're done, eat them with a friend quickly whilst warm at a safe distance. I would, more than one. Or keep them in an airtight tin for 3 days, and you can freeze them as well. And you can freeze them with the jam on. What Hetta's done there, she's lightly dusted them with icing sugar. She's sprinkled with the extra freeze-dried, decorated with the fresh raspberries, mint from the garden. And I do just want to quickly, I know I'm gabbling on, I do want to show you, just for fun, we did this as a tray bake and we're so pleased with it. It looks absolutely fab. So that was just a bit of a play around yesterday and I thought, oh, I wonder how that'll turn out. And it's gorgeous. So that's served, bearing in mind this is gluten-free and dairy-free, you could serve that with a dairy-free ice cream alternative or a dairy-free custard. Make a really, really nice pud. And I'm thinking that might even be a new Honeybuns idea. And let me show you one final thing. Again, this was a play around experiment, but I'm quite pleased. The final product doesn't look very good because they're slightly overdone, but you get the idea. If I was just messing about with extra mix, you can do them as a muffin, they would work just as well. I really hope you've enjoyed that. Let me remember what I've got to do. Thank you for watching. It's been a pleasure to have you all baking along. I'm so touched, I really am. It means an awful lot. I'll post a blog. I'll remember all of the links to the things that I've mentioned to be as helpful as we can with the content. That's the aim. We want to get better each time, so please do let us know what you want us to do. Please share your pictures and remember to tag us. That would be wonderful. And if you use the hashtag BakeAlong, if you use HoneybunsBakeAlong, yes, sorry, we can see and share your pics, so that would be absolutely brilliant. I hope that's been helpful. It's been really lovely to do this. I'm really enjoying it. Learning a lot actually, and refreshing my memory about recipes that we've done a long time ago, and to dust them off, it's been a real joy. So if you want any help at all, direct message me on Instagram. I'll get back to you and let us know how we can improve these videos. See you next Wednesday. Bye.